It's another mix breakdown, and I think the part you're going to like the most about this one is the fact that I only used GarageBand plugins to mix this song, which came out really nicely. It has a completely different sound than any of the other mixes where I was using the Slate Digital stuff. I really like it, and we're going to talk about that today, so let's get right to it.
It's gonna get better. It's gonna get better, baby.
We're going to start with the drums on this particular song because a commenter, Harold Spawak, I'm sure I'm killing your name there, your last name at least. I know how to say Harold. Harold, you requested this in the comments on the original song, so we're going to start with the drums, buddy. So the thing that I did here, and we should go into here and look at this section where you select the drummer and the kit that this particular drummer is playing. I used Austin here on the drummer roster under songwriter, okay? So Austin, as a default, plays the Roots brush kit, which was pretty good. And it is, in fact, at the very beginning of the entire song, that's what I wanted. I wanted that. He's using like those hot rod stick things. I wanted that sound. But then as the mix became more complex, I realized, man, those like little stick things are not really cutting through in the mix, especially on the snare and stuff. I needed there to be power in the fills. I needed there to be power on the snare, and it just wasn't coming through with his original kit. I have made videos about this before, but just so you know, I switched the kit that Austin was playing to the heavy kit, which is pretty much, I think its original intent was for like heavy rock and heavy stuff like that. But this is not what he's playing, obviously. He's playing sort of like a, I don't know, whatever song genre this is. But he's not playing like heavy rock. But it worked really nicely. So let me just let you hear something so you know what I'm talking about.
Somewhere up there.
Right? It has that very, that snare in particular is really a rock snare.
And now I know that my blood flows. I can feel it in.
Right? But it also has like that rock ballad sound. And of all the kits, I went through every single kit in this process. I just found that the heavy one had the kick sound that I wanted and the snare sound that I wanted. All the other stuff, like I can live with toms, all that kind of stuff. I wasn't overly concerned with how they sounded. It was that snare and that kick that I really needed there to be like, wow, okay, so we did that, switched the kit on the drummer, okay? The couple of other things that make this particular track interesting, I think, is the way that I used the groove matching ability. So if you look down here, in this section of the song, it's the opening verse, right? And it is set to halftime, okay? And we are set to 85 BPM. So that is pretty slow. When you halftime 85, it's pretty slow. But if you come to the next verse, it's now following the bass track, right? So I have it following the bass track there. If we keep going down, we're still on the bass track, still on the bass track. Oh, so this is all bass track in here. It's following that. Okay, so here's one where it's not following the bass track. And let's listen to where we are in the song here.
It's gonna get better, baby.
Okay, so this is the solo section where it is no longer following the bass track. It's sort of a way to get this drummer to perform a little bit, right? If you have it set to all the same thing, yeah, he's going to perform it that way, but across the board. I think it's nice sometimes, especially in a song like this, for the drummer to sort of then start dictating what the rest of the band should be doing. Sometimes the drummer should be playing to the song and playing to the bass player or, and all that kind of stuff. But there's other moments where I like it where like the beat just like really breaks down to like a snare and a kick and a hi-hat. Nothing complicated, nothing funky, just sort of like really straight, right? So for example, in the solo sections, a really good place for a drummer to lay back, right? You don't, in this particular kind of a song, sort of ballad rock kind of thing, the drummer, in my opinion, should sort of lay back and let the soloist take up all the space that he wants to take up, he or she, right? So in this solo section, all the way through it, you will not find it following any of the bass track, right? So we keep going down. So it's here where he does start following the bass track, which is at the end of the solo. So then we go into this chorus. We're still following the bass. Another place, I believe. Yep, we're following the bass here. Still following it all the way to the end. I believe we follow it. Yep. Okay. So that's it. Sometimes it was following the bass, sometimes it wasn't, right? There's other little things like that particular section. I mean, we do it. It happens 3 times in the song. This little bit here. So that we want to get better. It's going to get better. That's those are the words to my song. Okay, so in that particular section, it was critical that the drummer was following the bass part. That particular beat was nowhere to be found inside of this drummer's, like all of the settings that you have, right? So I really wanted it to get that sort of boom, 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 boom.
It's gonna get better. It's gonna get better, baby.
I really wanted that. And I played it in a way on the bass where I was, hopeful that the program, that the auto drummer would be able to follow it. A lot of times when I'm playing bass parts, especially in GarageBand, I really try to stick to that whole, like the bass and the kick drum should play together.
It's gonna get better. It's gonna get better, baby.
Not all the time, of course, but it's one of those elements. It really helps bass tone. If the kick and the bass are playing, a lot of the same moments, right? It helps give the bass some attack. It helps, sort of lift the kick in a certain way. When they're firing at the same moments, you get just a lot of benefits from that kind of stuff. So in that moment, I really wanted it to play that way, that kick drum that way. And then the other thing is when I was playing the bass, I played a pattern that I was pretty sure the computer would be able to pick up and work with. Okay. So that's something that I do recommend when you're playing your bass parts. Keep in mind that, you might want that kick drum to be firing at the same time. So try to play a part that you can imagine, like this is what a drummer would do. I guess I just said that super long. But that's the idea of the way I play bass parts. Is this something a drummer would play on the kick? Yeah, I think so. Let's play that and then tell the thing to follow it. So that's one of the ways that I get my drum tracks to sound like they're being performed by a real person, right? On and off on that following the bass part, but also in that bass part, leading that drummer to where I need him to be. Okay. So that is the long, nitty gritty details. Harold, I loved that you said that in the comment, by the way. Okay. So, that's that. Nothing too interesting else to talk about. I believe as far as, there's no compression on this. I might have EQ'd it a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit of a hit in the 2K area and a little bit, 5K and above, just to help the hi-hat. And this is, sort of the top range for the snare drum. Just a little bit of a lift because, again, I really wanted to hear the snare. And this is a big mix. So that is that, okay? No funny plugins at all, just GarageBand stuff. I want to talk about the acoustic guitar next. Okay, so here we are. This is the natural flat pick setting. I'm using my LCT 140, which also I used on the vocals, and we'll talk about that later. But I was using a small pencil condenser microphone on my Martin DSS 17 back there. And then I got to say, man, when I turned on this natural flat pick thing and started listening to it, I was like, wow, that's pretty darn good. Like I was really happy. It's not an acoustic guitar tone that I usually use, but I liked what I heard. So let's listen to that just so you know. Sort of almost like a mid-range tubbiness to it, which is pretty darn accurate to how that guitar sounds. It's not exactly like it is in the room, of course. I had to brighten it up a tiny bit because I wanted to make sure that I could hear the, the pick sounds and the high end of the guitar for sure. But overall, this particular setting, really good. Here's what I did to the EQ. I brought a little bit out right above, 1K, 1160 hertz. So it's just a little bit of a drop in the high end there. And I guess we can call those high mids. Up here, it's just a little touch in the high end. And, you know, that microphone, this LCT 140, this thing is so great, you guys. They're not very expensive at all. I think they're like $200 each or something. And this is by far, as far as the least expensive, not the least expensive, amongst the lesser expensive pencil condenser microphones, I doubt you're going to find anything that will compete with this. As it's just so good. The high end on this thing is so nice. It's not brittle. It's really smooth, tons of detail, but it's not brittle and, you know, shitty. So anyway, this acoustic guitar, really impressive. This natural flat pick thing, really nice. On the compressor, I did go in and switch this to acoustic guitar. The default compressor just wasn't grabbing it enough, I felt, and I really wanted it to be smooth throughout the performance of the song, right? So you can see, you know, I closed down the threshold, you know, sort of a medium amount. Here are the rest of the settings. You know, attack was pretty slow, and the gain I did boost a little tiny bit. So overall, really nice job. Oh, I also like that they give you, as a default setting, they give you an EQ after the compressor. So, you know, because a lot of these compressors, as you compress, it's going to change the sound, right? Normal stuff. It was nice that I had it sort of defaulted in there. Again, I brought up the high end a little bit more here, as you can see, because the compressor was squishing it too much. Just not too much, but I was able to bring it back out with this EQ. Of course, I'm bringing down a little 200 as always, and a tiny hit in the 100 and below before you hit the high pass filter there. But otherwise, you know, oh, and I think this might have even been like, I started with this acoustic guitar rhythm preset, and I probably did go around and manipulate it a little bit. So happy days. This was a good sound. I used a little bit of the stock reverb, a little bit of the stock ambience. Good sound, all things considered. Right? And in the whole mix, you know, there's moments, I mean, when I listen to it now, I'm like, oh, it could have come up here or there. But in the whole mix, it works, you know, it's pretty good. Let's get to like a busy section.
This modern world, this modern love, I'm finally on.
Now, one of the things that I did for the very first time on one of my Music Monday songs was actually play the mandolins. You guys have been staring at these mandolins up above my head for, you know, months now, and I never play this darn thing. So anyway, you know, I was sitting here, I was working on the song. I was trying to get that high end of the guitar to sort of do what I wanted it, what I could hear in my head. And I really, like, all day, I was like, I should just play the mandolin. I should just play the mandolin all day. I didn't end up recording any mandolin until 10:30. I kept just being like, it's in the case. It needs to be tuned. But I was being lazy, right? Stuff I say not to do. I was, you know, at some point I was like, forget it. I'm going to go get that mandolin. I'm going to tune it and I'm going to play a mandolin part. It was just what this thing needed. It really was. One of the things that I think is pretty awesome about this is if you look in at this EQ and stuff, it's so darn minimal. And that, again, was this microphone, the LCT 140 by Lewitt Audio. I don't know if you've ever tried to record a mandolin, but getting a good mandolin sound is pretty tough. Not a lot of people have nice sounding mandolins. I'm one of the lucky ones. I do. That's a really special F-style custom built Hollaback mandolin. I mean, he's a master luthier from the Czech Republic. It's an amazing mandolin. It sounds incredible. So when I went to record it, I was genuinely surprised how little EQ or compression I had to apply to it because this microphone was doing such a solid job of just getting a good sound. And I've talked about this before. I've made a video about it. It's called EQing at the source, right? So it takes some time. You got to figure out where in the room you need to be. You got to figure out where on the instrument the microphone needs to be. You also need to figure out, are you using the right microphone or not? But all of these components come into play when you get it right in a situation like this, right? And it was sort of a nice surprise. I was like, wow, I don't really have to do anything to that sound. In fact, when I did do stuff to that sound, I didn't like it. It would sort of accentuate some of the rhythmic inconsistencies, especially in the 16th note, the tremolo area. They were, you know, the rhythmic inconsistencies were just becoming more pronounced, and it was not working in general, right? It just sounded good out of the gate. This I was really impressed. The Space Designer reverb is on here. I'm using the 6.6 second Botta Church. Really great sound. And I just wanted to get it, I wanted there to be a nice long reverb to give it that classic sort of Italian mandolin sound. But I didn't want it to be overbearing, right? So it's dialed in just a little touch. Listen to it soloed out. Now, it might not sound like a touch when I do that, but in the grand scheme of things amongst the mix, that reverb is only like really discernible and detectable in the choruses when I'm hitting those tremolo sections. Let's see if we can find one of those. Right? So that's what it sounds like, obviously soloed out. In the whole mix, try to hear that reverb. It's just enough to give you that sense of, oh, it's got that long reverb on it.
The one who used to make me lonely, she finally fades away. I used to think that she was the only, but now I know today.
You know what I mean? It's not like overbearing by any means. When it's soloed out, it does sound a little loud, but in the mix, no. I think it's just right. Personally, that's what I think. Okay, so at this point, you might have started noticing how much automation is on that vocal track, right? We're talking about this guy right here. This is the vocal track. All of that yellow automation stuff. There's a lot on this, and it has... it's more obvious in this song. I don't normally end up doing that amount of automation to a vocal track, but because of the fact I was using this ultra sensitive, it's not ultra sensitive, but it's very sensitive. Small pencil condenser microphones tend to be on the sensitive side. I hadn't used one for vocals in a very, very long time. I sort of forgot how great they are for singing into. They just have like a whole presence to them. A really great dynamic range to them, obviously. And it was an interesting experiment. Again, because of Anna Novel, I'm still trying to get my vocals out front, and I should make a correction. I said something last week. Anna has become like, not only is she like a great commenter and viewer here on GarageBand and Beyond, but she's an ultra talented singer and songwriter. And we've been chatting a lot online, and, Anna, I gotta say, you're a friend, and I'm glad you're part of the family here at GarageBand and Beyond and a viewer and all that stuff. But yeah, man, you're a friend. So I wanted to sort of correct what I said last week. So anyway, Anna Novel, great musician. I'm going to actually leave a link for her in the more info area. You guys probably know she comments a lot, and she's a big part of the family here, and, and a good friend and a great musician. So check out her music. I'm going to leave a link. Anyway, so back to the vocals. Let's get back to the vocals. One of the things that I should have done when I recorded these vocals is I should have compressed them on the way in, okay? It's not something we have the ability to do in GarageBand, and since I was on this whole like GarageBand's only plugins thing, I didn't do it. I have the ability to do it because I have a Focusrite Sapphire Pro 24 DSP. The DSP chip is an isolated CPU chip inside of my interface. It allows me to compress any audio signal before it gets to GarageBand. It's a limitation of GarageBand, but you can work around it with, like a little channel strip preamp thing, like my Jomeek 3Q has a compressor on it, nice little optical compressor. It's a little more obvious than I would like it to be sometimes. But anyway, the Focusrite Sapphire Pro 24 DSP comes with software, and in the mix control software, that's where the compressor lives. And I could have and should have compressed this vocal. If I had, I wouldn't have this massive dynamic range thing going on here. It would have been a little more squished and just even across the board. So the vocals wouldn't have had to be automated so much. So that's one of those cases where, like, it's not something I would do all the time, but because of the microphone, because of the performance, because of the way the song is, it has soft parts, loud parts, it would have been better to compress it. So if you've ever wondered, when do I compress the signal before it gets to the computer, this would have been a good one. Vocals are a good place to do that. Guitar tracks, acoustic guitar tracks are a good time to do that as well. Sometimes it really depends on the performance, the performer, the microphone, the song. But it's, if you go through a take and you notice like something like this, where there's like really low parts and really hot parts, compressor, get a compressor, put a compressor on in front, and it will solve your problem there. Okay. On the bass, I'm using the Modern Stack, no external plugins at all GarageBand. Compressor, I switched to Bass Lite away from its default compressor. Just wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. Actually, let's go back to the sound on this vocal, because I want to say one thing about this vocal. This compressor that I was using is the Classic Vocal Compressor. This thing is pretty darn stellar, you guys. Once I had to go through a bunch of different compressors. I just was having a hard time getting it just to sound the way I wanted it to sound. I really wanted it to be in front of the mix and in front of your face, so it sounded like I was in the room with you. I know somebody commented that, and I was really, really happy. I had to close it down quite a bit at negative 35 dB on the compressor threshold. So that is pretty heavily compressed vocal take, but I think because of, again, the microphone, the performance, and the performer, it was just this was what it needed. So it just needed to get hit harder, but it really did a great job. It's so transparent. And by transparent, engineers mean you don't hear it, right? So sometimes you'll use like an optical compressor or the optical compressor option, and you'll really hear that compressor squishing and opening and squishing and opening. That is not transparent, right? So it does exactly what you want it to do, but it's super, super transparent. Like at no point was I like, wow, I really hear that compressor working. And I was genuinely impressed with this Classic Vocal Compressor. So I just wanted to make sure that I talked about that a little bit. Pitch correction, of course. Use the noise gate, of course. The compressor, double EQ again. Not a ton of EQing there. Just a ton of, low end was removed. And here, a lot more removal of particular frequencies, right? That microphone gets everything, right? It's a condenser microphone in a small room. It's going to get everything. So I was basically notching out like room sound stuff. But besides that, I wasn't boosting anything, right? And I like that when I just have to remove a little bit here or there and not have to sort of create something that wasn't recorded. That's a great way to be EQing, Anyway, so that's that. A little tape delay, the delay and reverb from the master channel output, as always. And that's the vocals. Okay, so now I'm done with that. I'm sorry I jumped around on that one. Besides that, let's say basic grand piano. This is coming out of the, Grand Rhapsody package from Waves, which is great. This is the 57 Dynamics for sure. And I added a couple of condenser mics, the little 84s. Neumann KM184s are what they're emulating. Great little sound. I love these piano sounds. Such a great usable sound, this 57 Dynamics for sure. So I guess, this particular one wasn't GarageBand. I know. Maybe some of you were like, hey, that's not a GarageBand thing, but hey, you know what? That GarageBand piano, I can very rarely use it, especially because I know I have these at my fingertips. But I didn't use any compressors or anything on this from GarageBand. It's all sort of compartmentalized inside of this plugin. Grand Rhapsody piano, sweet thing. Sorry, I'd use one thing outside of GarageBand. The other thing, classic rock organ, nothing too crazy here. Of course, I did automate the drawbars as I usually do. No compression, no EQ on that. There's a couple of moments though, like in this one, I think it's the last one. I really liked the fact that when you look at this bit of automation here, you'll hear that slide up as I do it. So let me just play you in a little bit. Well, it's a slide down, I guess, right? So it's just I was really happy when I heard that this is what came out. I sort of haphazardly placed some of this automation on this particular track. I remember it was like getting late and whatever. But anyway, listen to it slide in or slide down as the volume comes up. It's pretty cool.
It's gonna get better.
Not cool. It's just like, it just sounds like a real Hammond organ part. You know, that volume pedal swelling in as the guy goes. It's just it was automation swell, but I did perform the little slide down the keys there. Anyway, those are sort of the key components of this song. I will say for a fact that I'm very, very happy that I did this and only used the GarageBand plugins. It really taught me that some of these presets are totally worth my time. And again, you know, I know I use the Slate stuff a lot because I've been using it a lot. And this sound that I got is really different than when I use the Slate stuff. I don't know how to compare them too much. I might want to say like the Slate stuff makes it sound like it was recorded in like New York, and the GarageBand stuff makes it sound like it was recorded in LA. So I think that's actually pretty accurate. You know, like there's a nice cleanliness to this particular mix, and that is really attributed to the fact that I was using the GarageBand plugins. The Slate stuff, which I adore and will continue to use, some of the Waves plugins that I have for mixing and stuff, they're really, really great. And they just give you a different sound. It's warmer. It's a different sound. It's not as clean. And if you know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about like East Coast and West Coast production, then you'll know what I'm talking about. It's just one of those things. There's like a whole like Hollywood, LA sound. I don't know, you know, hopefully you know what I'm talking about versus the like New York, Philadelphia sound. I feel like the New York, Philly sounds a little more dirty, a little more gritty, got a little more, I don't know what to say because I don't want to offend anybody here, but this is a very subjective topic. But that's my 2 cents, maybe more than 2 cents, 25 cents on the sound using the GarageBand plugins versus the Slate plugins. They're both great, but now I know that if I use the GarageBand plugins, I'll get sort of more of a Hollywood, LA production thing going on, and that's good to know. So here at the end of the video, I wanted to just big shout out to my patrons. You guys, you know, Trevor Sanders, you comment all the time. You're a great patron on the page. Richard Suter, Paula Ungar. I know I'm saying your guys' names wrong, but you know, it's tough. Max Ruggier, Mark Tomlinson. There's someone named, I'm gonna kill it here. Takas Gerjo, Stephen Pickering, Sean Stewart. You know, you guys, Joe Williams, Jeffrey Kirkland, Jason Blaney, James Sewell, Jack Conti, Ikinik, that's a tough one. Ikinik, Gregory, well, your last name's tough, buddy. Gregory Godot, Gregory, Glenn Letts, Dylan Bradshaw, David Moulton, David DeLuke, Daniel Melchior, CJ Marciano, Brian Maragno, Andrew Wellington, Alex Overall, and Lewin Beringer, who is my dad. He's also a patron and has been for years, decades. I mean, he's my dad. He's been a huge supporter. Anyway, you guys, I wanted to say thank you personally, you know, as much as I can. Just wanted to say thank you to my patrons. And you guys have been great at just helping me survive, helping the channel survive. You like these videos, and that's awesome. You're learning from the videos, that's awesome. And to the rest of you, you guys should be thanking them too, because the only reason that the mix breakdowns happen are because the patrons sponsor those videos. They don't get viewed very much, which means then there's no income coming from them from Google, right? So it's really all about you guys who want to learn. I make it for you. And I get to make it because of the patrons, because they will help support the channel and help it grow, and they believe in the project. They like what I do, and I like that they like what I do. So just wanted to say thank you to all of them. So if you guys want to find out more about the Patreon page, you can figure that out because there's a link above my head now, and probably in the more info area. But anyway, you know, as always, you guys write music, create music, take risks as songwriters. Don't get bogged down, and just keep pushing. Take risks in music. It's only going to get better, and I guarantee that part for you. So that's it. Have an awesome day. Peace and love.